In this lesson, we're going to be talking about SNMP. SNMP is the Simple Network Management Protocol, and not surprisingly, it's used to manage network devices. By manage, I'm talking about extracting information and also sometimes setting configuration parameters. The Simple Network Management Protocol currently has 3 versions, started with version 1 that has been superseded for several years now, although it's still the predominant version that you'll see when you run across SNMP in network devices. Version 1 was very insecure. One of the reasons for that is it lacked any ability to do encryption, so there was no privacy involved with the communication between a system running SNMP and the server that it communicated with. So there was no privacy, no encryption, no ability to protect the information that was being transmitted. As you'll see shortly, there's a lot of very useful and important information that can be communicated over SNMP. And of course, there's also the ability to have SNMP set configuration parameters, and that can be really interesting and useful information as well. So on top of the lack of encryption, there was no real authentication involved in version 1. The way you authenticated with version 1 of SNMP was a concept called a community string, which is barely a password. And the community string was used to tell the SNMP system that you knew what this community string was, and so you were authorized to communicate with it. The problem with that idea, and why I hesitate to use the word authorized, is that typically the community strings with SNMP version 1 were well known and defaulted to the words public and private. The community string public referred to the ability to gather read-only data, meaning you could get information from a system running SNMP, and private was for write access, meaning you could set configuration parameters. So let me show you a way to get information from a system running SNMP. So I'm doing an SNMP walk, which means I'm going to connect to a system running SNMP, and I'm going to walk through the MIB, and the MIB is the Management Information Base. And so SNMP walk is going to connect to this system, and it's going to pull all of the information that it can find from the system that's running SNMP. So I've just done an SNMP walk. And you can see all of this information. You'll see here on the left-hand side it says SNMP version 2 MIB, means the Management Information Base is a version 2. You can see the description here. I'm running a Linux system, and it's running kernel version 3.2.0. It's also a Ubuntu system with a symmetric multiprocessing kernel. So there's some really interesting and useful information. I now know the kernel version, and I can look up vulnerabilities against that kernel. So that's really helpful information to have, again, which is why SNMP is a good protocol for extracting information, and why version 1 is so insecure that you can just connect using the community string public, which you saw me use. It's well known, it's a default, it's what lots and lots of systems use just because it's easy and, as I said, it's well known. Using that one community string, I can connect to this system and get all of this information. You can see all of these other variables that it's got, including system uptime, the system date, and right down here towards the bottom you can see the boot image. So I know what file and the name of that file that was used to boot the device with. And sometimes that may provide me some additional information. The UUID of the system, the number of processes and the number of users, and a variety of other pieces of useful information. So as I said, SNMP version 1 is the predominant version that you will see out there. There have been 2 additional versions and some intermediate changes in those versions as well. So we've got version 2, which tried to fix some of the problems with version 1. And finally, we have version 3. And with version 3, we finally get some stronger authentication and some encryption, although there were versions of the version 2 protocol that tried to fix some of those issues as well. But as I said, version 1 is kind of the one you're going to see a lot of because it's the one that's been out there for the longest. It's the one that all the vendors support. It's the one you're guaranteed probably to have systems be able to talk in. And so I think a lot of people find that it's just easier to go to version 1 and they don't really think so much about the security implications of using version 1 of this SNMP protocol. If just these lines of text are a little overwhelming for you, I can show you a graphical way of getting the same information. Here's a program. It's written in Java. I'm running it in a virtual machine, but running this under Windows. And as it's Java, it will run under just about any platform that will support Java. So I've got my server address up here, and that's the system I'm going to be connecting to. And you can see on the left-hand side, it's got a tree view of the management information base. And again, the management information base is the way that data in SNMP is described and stored. So I can open this up, and I can open up the system, and I can get the sys description. And you see the result table on the right-hand side. I've got the value again, which is the same that we saw before. I can get the object ID and the uptime, which is 11 hours and 32 minutes and 34 seconds. And then I've got my contact and name and location. And since the system I'm querying here is just kind of a default installation, I didn't spend any time actually putting a lot of data into it and making sure there were a lot of MIBs involved. If that particular MIB was installed on the system, I could get the number of interfaces, and then I could get information about the interfaces. I could get the interface type, the speed, the physical address, the status, and the number of packets and octets that have flown in and out of that particular interface. I've got information about TCP and UDP, and then I've got a lot of information about the devices that are attached, and of course the storage as well. So if I open up the storage table, I can show you the types of information that's there. So I can see the amount of disk space that's used. I can see the size of that storage. Here's a lot of different pieces of information that would be really helpful and useful as you're trying to extract information about your target. If you find systems that are running SNMP, that's a pretty great find, and you can pull a lot of information. And as I suggested earlier, some of these different parameters have the ability to be set remotely using SNMP as well. So in addition to just pulling the information, you can set different parameters and change the configuration of the running system using SNMP. So SNMP, pretty powerful information tool and a great way to get information about your target systems.